Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the third instalment of our Reflections series for 2021. We've done two of these now, and I've been really chuffed with how they've gone. Amazing people, Stacey and Nicole, to interview, but I've really been looking forward to this one as well. As an insolvency practitioner, I do like to look at the learnings that come about from businesses or ventures that might find themselves in distress, in order to advise others on how to attempt to mitigate against making similar mistakes in the future. And in the same vein, I like to look at my colleagues, contacts and friends to hear what they've learned from their different experiences, as I think it builds towards a wealth of knowledge. And this is why in this series, I'm talking with a number of esteemed and accomplished individuals to see what 2021 meant to them, the lessons that they've learned and what might be ahead for 2022. Today I'll be speaking with Radhika Kanhai, partner at Cornwalls, and my very good friend. I'll bring Radhika in now. Welcome, Radhika.
Hi, Alice. Great to be here.
Absolutely. So we've almost made it to the end of 2021. It's been pretty epic.
We have.
I know, from what I've seen, you've been pretty busy. You've had a pretty big year with some interesting matters on the go. You've had some technical presentations. I know you've been homeschooling. Very importantly, competing with me on Apple Watch fitness challenges.
Yes.
And you even made it to Sydney last week. That's a bit exciting.
I did. I feel like it's all happening now that Melbourne has come out of lockdown. Like we've been let out loose and unrestrained, and we're making the most of it.
You don't have freedom fatigue yet?
Probably because I'm feeling like I'm crawling to the end of the year. So normally this time of the year, you know, I wouldn't feel as probably a little bit fatigued as I am now, but looking forward to having a bit of a break. I think everyone in Victoria, everyone in Melbourne really deserves a lengthy break this year, given the last 18 months or close to 2 years we've had. So I think everyone's sort of pushing through to Christmas and then having a well-deserved break.
Absolutely. Do you think, sorry, question without notice, but do you think that the fact that we haven't been able to have a lot of leave, well, especially sort of our Melbourne colleagues haven't been able to have a lot of leave or been able to go, you know, on too many trips, that's actually, I don't know, caused a lot more fatigue because we've been less inclined to take that annual leave, and so we're really trying to struggle to get to the end of the year?
I know at my firm, and particularly with my team, I've really been focusing on well-being and making sure that people take like even a day off or a couple of days off. People have generally, of course, been reluctant to do so because it's like, well, where can we go? There's nowhere to go. But we've been really emphasizing the importance of just having a break, particularly, you know, during the last 18 months or so, and the advent of Zoom calls, Teams calls, and that strain that presents physically on your body, your eyes, having sat through many hearings and mediations. I used to think, you know, leaving a mediation in person was tiring, but I think it's worse when you're actually on screen for most of the day and, you know, having to focus on the task at hand. So that focus on well-being very much has been critical for the team and people in the firm. And so I think what I've been finding is people have been taking that up more so, you know, just a few months before we came out of lockdown, because I think they themselves were realizing that they needed to have that break. And, you know, they couldn't just push through till lockdown was lifted because, of course, there was uncertainty about when that was going to be.
Cool.
And so taking the lead as the head of the team was also important. So I did take, you know, time out myself to recharge, to just turn off the screen. So yeah, that was definitely an important and useful thing for me to do.
I think that's important, and I think you're right about that Zoom or that Teams fatigue. I heard somebody say that the little box that we have and how close that is on our face and how we're looking to people, generally speaking, the only other time that we would have that perspective with someone is if we're in a confrontation. So if you're actually in a physical fight or something with somebody, you're never normally this close.
Yeah, it was like invading our personal space.
Yeah, and so sort of from that, I don't
Yeah.
know, is it a physiological perspective? Our bodies are sort of feeling almost quite fatigued from being confronted constantly, even though it might not be a
Well,
confronting discussion.
Well, I mean, you mentioned homeschooling. So I've got a 15-year-old daughter, and she had a very structured homeschooling environment with her school being in high school. So they would have Zoom periods during the day, and she started complaining of headaches. And I took her to the doctor,
Wow.
and the doctor said this is something that she's seen commonly with kids her age. She calls them Zoom headaches. So it
Wow.
was just this ailment through staring at screens, because normally at school they would walk around, they would only really
Yeah.
be on screen limited periods of time during the
Yeah.
day. But she was finding, because they were leaning in and their posture was different to how it would be if they were in the classroom, it was an
Mm.
actual ailment that she was observing uh, during lockdown and post lockdown.
No, absolutely. We won't go into how you and I have structured our desks to try and get the right posture for ourselves today, but we do know that it is quite difficult to try and, sort of maneuver it in a way that doesn't, is ergonomically correct. I totally agree.
Mm.
So Radhika, I guess, can you kick off by telling me what 2021 has meant for you?
Well, I suppose in the vein of what we've been talking about, just staying resilient, in the face of adversity. Yes, that's a commonly used phrase, but I think, more so than ever, 2021, particularly for us Melburnians, after thinking that we'd done the right thing, went through a period of extensive lockdown in 2020, 2021 would be quite different, and people were quite optimistic when things started opening up, January, February, and then we went into lockdown mid-February, and then again for extended period after that. I think, it really showed the mental toughness and and for a lot of people that digging deep and having that inner strength. Of course, a lot of people also found it difficult to face the 2021 lockdown. And so the focus on mental health and well-being became important from a team management perspective, firm management perspective as well. The other thing for me with 2021 was the importance of being there for my team. I think never before has my position of leadership been tested as it was in 2020 and again in 2021. So sort of leading from the front and showing up even on days that I didn't necessarily feel like it, which, meant that I, of course, had to take breaks myself. But also I found that, it was okay to show vulnerability to the team, that, yes, I'm experiencing the same thing as what you're going. So kind of being connected in that way, and I suppose having that deeper connection that brought with the team, was really evident in the last year and the last few months for me. And I suppose the other thing with 2021 has been, focusing on the good things that a lockdown did bring. Like, it did allow for a lot of self-reflection. It did allow for a slowdown of life. I think you and I are probably guilty of the rushing woman syndrome. Life
Indeed. Yep.
demands, kids, having, the stresses of work. So having that time to not be push and pulled each way allowed for self-reflection. It did allow for me to also focus on my own self-care. And so, I did things like I wouldn't have done before, like a detox program and, doing these Apple competitions with you, which kept me sane, and we're still going. I think we're over the 50 competition mark. So we've been doing this for almost a year, if you count the weeks.
I know.
So that's been great. And, sort of helping each other keep motivated while at the same time, having that mental toughness, which I think the dark periods anyway for people in lockdown was really important. So that's some
I
reflection.
totally agree. And it's interesting when you do look at the good side of things as well, because I must admit, so Radhika and I have been catching up almost every week. We have it in our diary now, a half an hour chat, which even when we were in sort of offices next door to each other in Melbourne, every week we probably speak every week, but we wouldn't be face to face. And I've really appreciated that time, especially not being able to physically be in Melbourne. So, there are things that do come out of that. Jill Lawrence from Chartered Accountants Australia New Zealand asked us who's winning the Apple Challenge, and I can very comfortably say that we're so close. It was, I think, 24-25 at the last one that we had. So
I don't know. I think you're doing yourself a disservice. I'm looking at my watch now, and you're a gun. You are 29, and I am 25.
Oh, there you go.
So
there you go, Jill.
I've got to catch up with Alice.
I'm going to say pretty close this week, though. I'm feeling a lot of heat.
Well, do you know what I've found? That all that incidental walking and movement during when you're in the office. So today I'm in the office as a you. It is so easy to get your steps. Whereas lockdown, it's like Apple might have thought I was passed out or dead or something, because there's some days when my movement was so low. And I must say, the first time we went into lockdown in March 2020, I even forgot to put my Apple Watch. But then when I put it on, it was like, is there any point? Because I'm not moving around. So actually having that watch was a bit of a motivator for me to go, okay, I've got to actually, get these numbers up. So, I suppose it was unusual not, being in lockdown and then having to basically use something like an external source like an Apple Watch to trigger the movement again.
No, absolutely. It's interesting, but at least we were able to have a few of those different tools around to help us through the course.
Yeah, you got to make the most of the tools available. So like connecting with you, that sort of was great. And then we had our little competitions, and when all we could do was walk. That was also interesting, because I never used to be a walker. I used to run, and I've gone back into running, as you know. But the walking was good. I actually started really enjoying it. It was a little bit meditative, and just allowed you to go outside, and it allowed me to discover parts of my area where I live that I hadn't come across. So
that's excellent.
Again, another positive.
Absolutely, and you've got to hold on to, I think, the positives as well. It's not about sort of being all hope, punk and Pollyanna, but I think you do have to pull out the positives where you can, so that you don't get too sort of dredgy down in the bottom of it all. So good work with that.
No, very important. Yeah, very important.
So what about milestones, Radhika? It's been a pretty big year. There's been a few things that have gone on. I know that us together, after a long matter that started at the end of 2014, we finalised that this year. So that was a big milestone for both of us together, I think.
And then we had therapy by talking about it publicly. So that was great. So we had a bankruptcy matter that, went on for a very long time. So it's a bit cathartic, wasn't it? Sort of having
it was very cathartic
after that. And look, in a similar vein, I presented at the Eureka Expert Series on insolvency cases. And of course, one of the things that have evolved out of COVID has been the webinars that are so popular and easy to attend, and, giving you exposure which you wouldn't otherwise have. So with the Eureka webinar, it was national audience. And I think collectively with WERV, we had more than 200 people listen to those presentations. So that was pretty great. And then, flying up to Sydney last week, being a finalist in the Australian Law Awards as Mentor of the Year, that was pretty special. Representing the Melbourne office, and meeting up after several years with my Sydney colleagues, who I hadn't seen since I'd been in Sydney for a case in 2019. So that was fantastic. And Sydney, I suppose, given their smaller period of COVID lockdown, there was definitely a really energetic vibe in Sydney. I felt like there's their city is abuzz again. It was fantastic flying again. And it was actually quite a relaxing experience. I had some fears about it, you know, just standing in queues, waiting for certificates to be checked and all of that, but it was very smooth sailing. So that was great. Some of the highlights, you know, I've been really happy and just really proud of the team that I've got around me, very high performing, well connected. And I think, you know, connecting with them over Zoom and in between lockdowns in person, I feel like because of potentially what we've been through, but because we're actually during lockdown went out of our way to actually, you know, have even 15, 30-minute get-togethers most mornings, meant that, you know, we had that deeper connection. Whereas in the office, you know, you would be probably ships passing in the night because people would be, you know, out at webinars, or not webinars, seminars, breakfasts, you know, meetings, court, etc., and you wouldn't really see each other. Whereas having these concerted periods where you actually spoke to each other, even though via Zoom, was very good for that. On a personal front, you know, I've done 34 days of Italian on Duolingo.
Oh, have you really? We'll have to have a conversation.
So I was supposed to go to Italy in 2020, take my kids for their first European adventure, but that didn't happen. And so someone told me about Duolingo, and a few people at work have been on it. It's an app where you can basically choose, you can have a free version or a paid version, and you can choose from a myriad of languages. I think they've got some, they've got, you know, Native American, they've got some dialects. They've got all sorts. And I decided to do Italian because I'm thinking the next time, like, you know, when I definitely will go again, probably not next year, but the year after, I will have some grasp of the Italian language. So it's been a bit fun doing it. It's a bit fun, you know, something different. So
yeah, absolutely. I like it.
Don't ask me to say anything yet.
Not yet.
I think I can say I cook an egg or something. Something useful.
That'll
like
come
that.
handy. That'll come handy. You need to learn how to ask for why. That's the
so I'm doing the food chapter at the moment.
Oh, good. Okay.
So yes, I'm sure I will be doing that shortly. Maybe I'll just go out to an Italian restaurant.
No, that'll come in handy because Stephen's my husband, Stephen often says that when we went to Italy, it took me a little while to get, because I could speak fluent Italian when I left high school, and to get going.
Really? I did not know about this about you.
Yeah. And so we got, and just a little bit to get going, but, you know, here and there. And it was really good because we could actually eat off the beaten track. And so we actually were able to eat a lot of really yummy stuff quite cheaply and drink the good wine.
So did you do Italian? Did you do Italian up till you're 12?
Yeah. So, well, up to 11. My I'm from Reba in Far North Queensland, and it's got a really decent, significant Italian population. So, you know, we had in the course of just living, you know, we would live within the Italian language as well. But I learned it as well. But Stephen laughed because it took me a little while to get handled. And we were in Rome one day. We'd probably been in Italy for maybe a week, and we were in Rome one day on the Spanish Steps, and this guy just kept bothering me. And I got really annoyed to the point where I just then splurted out in quite clear and fluent Italian. I got really crook at him. And Stephen said to me, "You're right now, you're going to be able to speak." I said, "Yeah, I think I'm good now." And for the rest of the trip, that was fine. But it was interesting. It just took that to sort of click it back into gear. But
that's fantastic. Okay, well, next time we're chatting, we're going to have to explore. We've got to try and speak in Italian to each other.
You can do it while on your flash treadmill running along the Italian Riviera.
Yes, that has been inspiring me as well.
Very good. Oh, good stuff. And I think we might have touched on these a little bit, but what about some challenges, Radhika, that you faced this year?
Yeah, I mean, look, you know, keeping the team morale up and showing up as a leader, like that has been tough at times. You know, adapting to virtual hearings, meetings, etc. I feel like I'm whole hat at it now, and you know, click, and we're there. But at times, you know, that's presented as challenges. You know, I had a couple of interlocutory hearings and not having counsel right next to you, across from you, and not having the clients, at the back in the courtroom to be able to get instructions, and having to use WhatsApp or Teams to chat to them while the hearing's on. I mean, it's they're the challenges that instructing solicitors, I'm sure elsewhere, have had as well. So there were periods where you couldn't go into counsel's chambers and instruct them while the hearing was on because of security requirements of their chambers. And so that was really quite frustrating. But, having workarounds for that, and, the clients understanding the limitations and, working through it was something that we needed to do. I suppose, one of the things I've found is really having to focus on the development of junior lawyers when not in the office, because in a way, and this is not patronizing at all, but and I definitely was one of these people. You don't know what you don't know. So not being around people in the office and just learning by osmosis, I think, was a challenge for people like me who, really care for the learning and development of the junior lawyers. So just being alive to that and trying to address it in different ways. One of the ways I've tried to address it at the moment is with advocacy training, and basically having the young lawyers contact the associate of the judge hearing a particular list, like directions, and saying, asking permission to observe so that they can, because you would sit at the back of the room and while you're having your own matter heard, or if you just wanted to prepare for a matter by going and seeing, how it's done, learning that way, obviously can't do it at the moment. So trying to do a workaround and say, well, can we observe, and trying to get some tips that way. I think a few have taken it, so that's great.
That's excellent. And I think that is really relevant. I used to like sending my grads up on sort of under wind-up day or bankruptcy day, just so that they understand the process as well, because it's not something that you know until you know it.
No,
so
that's right.
That's great.
You've got to see it in action, I think. Yeah, so...
Yeah, I agree. Good stuff. What about lessons, Radhika? What lessons
lessons learned? Well, major thing, not to take anything for granted. 1 minute you think you could go to the movies, the next is not allowed.
Right.
Or, just sort of not taking anything for granted, living life to the fullest within reason, not postponing things that you might otherwise have. I think maybe, sort of saying, well, I've got to do this sooner rather than later, not putting things off.
The drinking champagne in the fridge analogy.
Yeah, that's right. And I think, the importance of authentic connections, like that human connection, the importance of relationship, those human relationships, both in business, I think, and obviously personal, private lives, is vitally important. So, ultimately, and I think I was listening to one of your earlier sessions, it might have been with Nicole Davidson, about at the end of the day, everyone's human. So I think she was talking about collaborative law. And so having that personal one-on-one connection is important, whether you're in business, whether you're managing a team, all very vital.
No, absolutely. And I must admit, the collaborative business dispute law that she was talking about sounds amazing. So we'll have to revisit that in another time and another place. But that's really important. Yeah.
Yeah. And I suppose the last thing was, similar to that, is being empathetic and vulnerable. I think, as someone who leads a team that was really called upon this year, and obviously last, like, you know, having that empathy, you know, I don't think never before have I been called upon to connect with the human side of people.
Yeah.
So that was a important lesson, and something to really have at the forefront of my mind leading the team this year.
That's fabulous. That's really, enlightening. I like that. And something to bring forward as well when things sort of do go back.
I think, you know, this is a sort of changed environment that we're in, and in the work we do, and I suppose looking at the people that we have in the team and the firm, I think people are wanting more from their leaders. They're wanting more from their employers. And so recognizing that from an empathetic standpoint, I think is really important, not just sort of paying lip service, but really listening to people and understanding where they're coming from, I think is really important, particularly in this sort of era of, you know, probably a shortage of good talent, shortage of, you know, good staff. I think people are more inclined to say, okay, well, you know, this person or this firm doesn't care for me.
We'll find somewhere that does.
Find someone that does. I think maybe because of what we've been through, people are expecting more of that. And so they should, more of that emotional, empathetic leadership and environment to work in.
Now, I knew this would happen because we've got 3 minutes left, and I need you to tell me all that you think 2022 has in store. So I'm not sure. 30 words or less, 140 characters. Radhika, what are we going to deal with in 2022?
Well, I mean, look, I think 2022 is really exciting. Look, I know we might have said this in 2020, but we weren't vaccinated then. And so I feel like, you know, 2022 is looking very optimistic. I'm very optimistic about 2022. I think we're in this really great stage of, you know, following on what I said about connections with people and, you know, like having the opportunity to lead people in an empathetic way. You know, we're going to see a lot of adaptation occurring with work environments, with how people interact with clients, but also with their work colleagues, you know, having what we've talked about, or we've heard, being a hybrid working environment, you know, flexibility, working from home, working in the office, finding what's right for your particular business, for your particular team. I think it's exciting times because I think for me, it'll be a bit of trial and error. Seeing what works for people, what people want, listening to people, I think will be very important as we enter 2022. And hopefully, you know, we'll see more certainty, more optimism with what, what
that's a good word.
Sorry?
I said optimism is a good word for 2022. I was going to ask if you had a word, but optimism.
Well, I actually had 3 words, you know, optimism, adaptation, and, you know, the hybrid flexibility. But the optimism is at the top.
I like that, as it should be, I think. Thank you so much, Radhika, for today. I think we could go on. We should probably have a monthly one of these so we can just catch up and see what's going on. It's really been fabulous. And I think it's really important to see all of these things from everybody's points of view. So I really appreciate your time, and I hope the rest of your year goes well, that you can have a good break before coming back for 2022. And thanks to everybody. Oh, great. Thank you. And thanks to everybody watching today, or might be watching a little bit later. You can join me again on Monday when I'll be talking to Alex Martin of Taurus Legal Management for his reflections on 2021. See you then.